Hey, you guys, and welcome to Real Estate Divas. I'm Julie Thompson with Texel Real Estate, here with my co-host, lovely co-host, Kristen Gerst with Capricorn Mortgage. And today I'm so excited. I haven't seen him in so long. With our special guest, our special fabulous guest, Grant Kemp. And Grant's going to teach us a little something.
Trademarked. Where's the song, Ryan? No, I'm super glad to be here. Thanks, guys, for inviting me out. This is fun. This is like the first time I've left my house in 6 months, so I appreciate the invite. I appreciate getting out here and being able to get in front of you guys and talk about a topic that I think is just something that now more so than ever, I think, especially coming into this next 12 to 24 months, like you've got to understand the creative aspect of everything that's going on. It's not to say that you don't need to know how to wholesale and do all those other things, because we do wholesale and do all those other things, but you've got to have this in your bag, or you're going to be the person that works at Lowe's and for years saying, I used to do real estate too, and telling the person buying paint your life story.
Yeah, I was a mortgage broker. I had a boat.
Yeah, right. Right.
Now I'm working at Home Depot. So yeah, why don't you start us off, because we are coming into a time where, I was around at the last mortgage crisis when everything shut down.
Yeah.
And that was the answer, was owner financing for me.
Yeah.
And I learned to owner finance in 2008, and I never looked back because I found that it was much more profitable than rentals.
For sure. Yeah, rentals, there's a few things I say about rentals. One is the only people that love rentals are the people that don't have rentals. Two is they're just not what everybody thinks they are, right? Everybody thinks they have this vision of what a rental will do for you in your portfolio, and it's just not really the case, right? I think people see rich people have rentals and make the equation, well, they got rich off of rentals, and that's just not the case. You get rich and then you get rentals. Rentals are fantastic. I have rentals, but they're not what people think they are. Meanwhile,
and rentals are not assets necessarily.
Ooh,
I
yeah.
put them into the liability
That's
category, whereas owner finance mortgage notes, those go in the asset category.
Yeah, because it's real money. It's real money.
Real
you get to
money.
spend.
Yep. And you don't have to hold back 25 or 30% of what you're making on your rentals, right? For maintenance, for vacancies, for make-readies.
Yeah. And and again, not to go down that road, but too heavily on the rental side. I know we want to talk about creative stuff, but if you're considering going down that rental side and you're just like, I don't want would you agree? Because like I said, I think rentals are great. I really do. I poop on them a lot, but it's because I want people to be aware. But my position, it basically boils down to, if you can afford to not make a single dollar on that property until it's paid off, that's when you get a rental, right? Like, that's kind of my opinion.
Well, because it is.
And it provides that write-off during, you can use that depreciation. If you need write-offs. Right. And it provides that as well.
So we'll get into a position where rentals are good to get, but that's not, I think, right now, right? And that's not going to be for the next couple of years. And what is going to be for the next couple of years is, as we kind of figure out what the pandemic has done to the market, as we see what's going on, you got to have the tools in your tool belt for the right area of or the right section of the market cycle. So we're about to be facing a period of time where property values will do something other than go up, right? We've seen this go up and up and up and up, and we recognize that, but we will see this go back down. All the forbearances will end, all this kind of stuff. We will see that go back down, and you've got to be able to capitalize and make true, real, actual money for yourself in that time. And I love, people, you'll meet a random person out talking about real estate, and for this last 5 years, like, oh, it's a good time to be in real estate, isn't it? And my response is always, every time is a good time to be in real estate if you know what to do in that cycle. There's never not a good real estate market. And to your point about getting in after the crash, I got in 2011. I learned how to make money at this crashed state, right? And my story was a little bit different than the guy that's at Lowe's, which was I'm making buku buck off of owner financing because that was the right choice for that market cycle. God was very good. I got dropped into an area and had the right doors opened and talked to the right people about it and was able to capitalize on truly what was the best thing to do at that market cycle. Well, 2015 rolls around, and I'm sure you guys remember, it's like, it was literally, it felt like overnight,
Well,
the
yeah,
market
because
went.
in
Absolutely.
2011, you could still pick them up subject to, which is how which is how you got started.
Yeah, absolutely, because I didn't have any money.
Right. Which
Well,
is,
and we
but
talked
then
about subject to last week.
Good.
So this makes it for a pretty good lead in. If y'all didn't watch last week's show, kind of watch that, and it'll lead right into what we're talking about today.
But again, you started there, and you were able to pick those up in 2011. But by 2015,
it was overnight. Days on market around here went from 6 months to 1 week.
Yeah.
Just like that, right? So most of the time you hear the guy at Lowe's talking about, well, I was doing great and I had a boat and blah, 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 and then the market crashed and I lost everything. Like mine was, I was doing great. I was buying houses left, right, and center, and then the market got good overnight. And I was like, how the heck do you make money in this market anymore? I don't understand what's happening. But the good thing about that was getting to learn over that next year or so how to make money in a high cash market. So you've got to have both, right? You got to know how to make money when everybody has equity and everybody's making stupid offers, and you got to know how to make money when none of that is true. And this is where we're headed. So like sub 2, even free and clear houses that you can buy with seller financing, this is going to be a really good insurance policy for you getting in to make sure you've got an asset that actually makes money, that when you get a deposit, you can actually go to take your sweetheart out on a good dinner because you got that $300 cash flow check in, and you don't have to wonder, well, what about vacancy or the HVAC going out? Because if you have a loan on your house, do you think that anybody has ever called in their right mind Wells Fargo and said, hey, Wells Fargo, my toilet's leaking. I'm going to need you to send somebody out.
I will interrupt you and say that yes. Yes, they have.
I qualified in your right mind.
Because I've had them call me.
I had one call.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had them call me after they talked to their mortgage company. I'm like, why are you calling me? Call your own warranty. I just sold you the house.
That's awesome.
Oh, as it was a realtor that sold the house. You're like, where? Yeah. No, I had one call me, and they were saying, oh, well, our air conditioning is going out. And mind you, they had lived there 9 months. Like owner financed it 9 months ago. And I was like, okay. After that, then they had the HVAC guy called me, and I'm like, I'm the bank. I'm the lender. I don't even own this house. I'm like, your deal
as an
with them.
interesting caveat to that, and this may be a little bit too advanced, but I don't really know. It's everybody's always watching from different stages, right? Mm-hmm. Thank you. I love how you can complete my.
That's why I'm so happy to see you.
I was going to say burritos, but one thing that might be surprising to you in that aspect is so when you're the bank, right? That's what we're talking about with owner financing. Is we are acquiring a property and allowing the seller to be our bank, okay? And then I like to turn around and be the bank for a buyer, right? I only own this house for like an hour and a half, ideally. You acquire it and then you turn around and you sell it. You option period. It's just like wholesaling, right? For all the same reasons people get into wholesaling and think they have to do wholesaling are all the same reasons I got into owner financing. I didn't have money. I did not have the ability to go get loans from a bank. All that kind of stuff that you think means you just have to flip something out quick. In actuality, you can build your portfolio. I did it, right? I had $4,000 whenever I quit my job, and that was it, and was able to be a millionaire in 5 years, right? So you turn around and you sell that out as the bank to somebody, but what people don't realize a lot of times on that dispo side, when you create that note, which I know you're so prolific in the note space of this secondary market, not only is that note itself marketable to a Kristen or somebody who buy a Capricorn, but if they don't fix the roof from that hail damage or whatever, keep the asset up in good shape, you may be surprised to know that that's actually a foreclosable offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you actually can contact them and say, look, I need this. The reason I let you buy this house from me is that my worst case scenario is you don't pay me, I foreclose, and I recoup my money that I wanted through the foreclosure. If they're not keeping that asset into such a condition that it's worth what you need it to be worth for that to be true, that's a foreclosable offense. So you're even protected on that side of things. No, you don't have to deal with the repairs. And if they don't deal with the repairs, you can get the asset back and turn more profits off of it.
So real quick, just because there are a lot of newbies out there watching, explain, we explained the subject to last week, maybe explain what owner financing is in the remedial terms, and then the different ways that you can apply that. And we can kind of go from there.
So you'll hear seller financing, you'll hear owner financing, right? Same thing, just a different way of saying it basically. But think about it in terms of okay, you might say you're a real estate investor And that's this blanket term, this umbrella term. And inside of that, there's wholesalers and landlords and, flippers and blah, blah, blah. Similarly, there's owner financing, seller financing. And inside of that umbrella, there's a lot of different kind of categories that you can do. You'll hear subject to, you'll hear the free and clear owner financing, you'll hear wraparound mortgages, right? There's different kind of methods within this overarching theme of seller financing.
And to be clear, because it's not just the free and clear owner financing, that's where you get a seller who owns it free and clear
Correct.
to owner finance it to you.
Correct.
But there are also a lot of investors who I run into out there who, they don't understand, yes, you can wrap around debt and owner finance. They think the only way to do it is if they own the property free and clear to owner finance. And I let them know, no, you can have an underlying lien. Absolutely. They don't have to get
you to have an underlying lien. That actually gives you the ability to charge more interest to your buyer and make more money if you have an underlying lien, to make a long story short, through the Dodd-Frank stuff. But yeah, I'm glad you drew that to everybody's attention, because, if you've got whatever in your bank account that you're going to make into your real estate portfolio eventually, right? Like, use that money and leverage it. All right, get the debt there and then wrap around that debt, build your assets. The hardest part about this is getting the property and getting that sold. So leverage it out, get the assets under you, and then you can buy down and refinance and get better debt terms and that kind of stuff. But again, to kind of remedialize and get to just the core functionality of it is basically, let's say, Jay Lee, that you've got a house and you're having trouble making your payments, right? You're 6 months behind, and you're just at this point where you're either headed to foreclosure or like you got to figure something out, right?
Yep, I'm at my wit's end, which there's going to be quite a bit of that going on.
And so you want out. What you can do as the investor is come in, talk to Jay Lee, and say, hey, I want to buy this house. I want to become the owner of this house, but we're going to leave the debt in place as is that you owe to Wells Fargo, and I'll just catch up that $6,000. Right? So that would be sub 2. That's what they talked about last week. Sub 2 is short for the phrase, I will buy your house subject to the underlying lien, underlying mortgage staying in place as is. That's what sub 2 comes from. But also imagine Jay Lee has 2 rentals because she hated relaxing and liking life. And now Jay Lee is 87 years old and she's done managing these rentals and they're free and clear. She just doesn't want to mess with it. She really liked cash flow, but all the other crap that came with rentals really sucked. So now she's got these 2 properties free and clear, and I'm going to call Jay Lee and I'm going to say, hey, look, these rentals right here, do you like messing with them? No, I don't like messing with them. Do you like the fact that you got money deposited into your bank account every month? I really liked that, but I never knew what it really was. Okay, so how about this? Instead of me going to get a loan from Bank of America to buy those houses for you, what if I bought those houses from you, but you just allow me to pay you your equity in installments? And that's the way that I like to propose owner financing to the high equity sellers. I don't want to say, hey, do you want to owner finance this to me? Hey, would you let me buy this with owner financing, whatever, because just from a psychological standpoint, right? Like, there's times where we want to create that shortcut response in our brains. There's times that we don't. That seller may have known somebody, had a friend who got screwed over by some unscrupulous investor who owner financed their house, right? So you say, hey, would you sell it to me with owner financing? They hear owner financing, they know that Sally got screwed over with owner financing, they're going to say no.
Yeah, it's a negative connotation immediately.
Has anybody ever heard of their friend Sally being screwed over by somebody buying their house and paying them their equity in installments?
Yeah.
No, right? So if I pose to my seller, hey, you got a lot of equity in this, and I can pay you way more. Like, if you want cash, I'll get you cash. We'll close next week. That's fine. I'll pay cash. I don't worry about that. But if you want to get like full price for this house, I'll pay it to you as long as you're willing to take your equity in installments. So now we've got a situation where she's like, oh, well, I did like receiving cash flow every month. I did not like having to deal with repairs and tenants and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, what if I give you cash flow every month and you don't have to deal with tenants and toilets and trash? That would be what I'm referring to as the free and clear owner financing. We become the owner of the property, and then we pay her on a monthly basis to get that done. So those are kind of the 2 major acquisition points that I would consider for buying. Third being private capital. I do a lot of purchasing with private capital where there's, you might be watching right now and you've got an IRA with $30, $40, $50, $200,000 in it and you don't want it in the stock market. those are the type of people that I work with, and I'll use that and their self-directed IRA to, Jay Lee is like, you know what? I'm 87 years old. I'm done. I just want these rentals sold. I just want to cash out and be done. I'm going to say, okay, cool. I'm going to call up one of my folks that has a self-directed IRA, and I'm going to get that $60,000. I'm going to give it to Jay Lee. I'm going to own those houses, and I'm just going to pay somebody's IRA for it, right? So those are the 3 ways that we acquire.
Well, there's another.
There is another.
Yeah.
So the way I got started was that I was buying houses with conventional mortgages. And again, we're talking pre-08.
Yep.
So I had a lot
Yep.
on my credit, which was I don't recommend to anybody.
Right.
Really, you should only do about 2 or 3 max until you get a portfolio loan or, you know, a warehouse line from a bank. But yeah, I was wrapping my own loans.
Yeah, that is another way to do it. And
As
I've got
I
some
had,
students
you know,
that
61 doors when the market crashed, and that's when I started changing everything into paper.
well, and that's why part of that is why I go those 3 routes that I go. I actually don't do any bank lending right now. It's all private capital or owner financing. I don't like PGs, personal guarantees, right?
Yep.
I am not risk adverse. I'm risk aware. And why take a risk that you don't have to take, right? And so that's kind of where I come from on that side.
Well, and I tell everybody just try to keep it
Right.
You know, if they're going to go somewhere, make sure that they're on business credit or
Right.
something like that. So they're not, because it does hamper you down the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah.
And when the market crashed, nobody would lend me money
Mhm.
Yeah.
because I looked like crap on paper. I did.
You're like, but I've got all these properties.
But I've got all these mortgages.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and they were all, you know, every property was cash flowing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was a nightmare to lend to for several years.
Yeah. And that's good. I'm glad you're bringing that up because you do. Like I said, I am not risk adverse. I've risked everything many times. You've heard me say I quit my job with $4,000. That is what I
That's
had.
risk.
That's risk, right? We risked everything, and I've risked everything many times. But
I had 4,000. Man, that's like luxury.
I know, right? I cashed out my big old 401k, got that
Hey.
$45,000,
Oh,
$4,500
money.
check, and said, "Do it."
Yeah.
So those are the ways that I personally acquire, is with those 3 main methods. So now you've acquired with seller financing. The seller financed to you. And then what I like doing is to create the paper that she's referring to. Is at that point in time, we own the property, right? There's a misconception, not a misconception, a lack of understanding of how mortgages and property ownership works, in that most people think, well, whoever owns the property owns the debt, but you know, what are the documents? If you're going to buy a house with a loan, there's 3 documents that go into that determine those. What are those 3 documents?
A warranty deed, a deed of trust, and a note.
Exactly. So what does the warranty deed say?
Warranty deed is who owns the property, who is responsible for maintenance and upkeep.
Mm-hmm.
Deed
That
of
is the
trust
actual owner, right?
shows who owes money to whom. And the way I like to remember that, because they both have the word deed,
Right.
and everybody gets confused by that, I was like, yeah, you have to trust somebody
Yep.
to loan them money.
a good
So
way.
always remember that.
Yeah, it's a good way to
Deed
think
of
about
trust.
it. So you've got a note that says Grant's going to pay Jay Lee $100,000 at 4% for the next 30 years. The deed of trust says if Grant doesn't do that, Jay Lee gets to take the property back. And then the warranty deed says Grant owns the property, right? So we got 3 different documents here that are all separated out. Whoever owns the house does not own the debt necessarily. That's why sub 2 works. So now what you want to do is you've got debt to your seller. Your seller financed it to you. The warranty deed has your LLC's name on it, not your personal name. Don't do any of this in your personal name. Always LLC. To the degree of, when you're signing your contract, don't even sign it your name. Sign it your name, comma, member, right? You need everything in an LLC. So then I'm going to find somebody who can't qualify for a loan for whatever reason. Maybe they are self-employed. Maybe they are with poor credit. Maybe that, whatever reason
there's
it is.
all types. People tend to automatically assume that seller financing, when you have somebody that purchases a property that way, that they're either low income or they're contract labor or something like that, and that is a large percentage. But I've done a seller financing with a doctor. These are people maybe high medical or student debt, that just can't qualify for that standard loan.
I've also
but they're
done
cash. They've got the cash.
Right, but I've also owner financed some to successful individuals
Exactly.
who didn't want to put 20% down.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to put 10% down for, say, 5 years.
I actually killed it on a deal about a month ago. We acquired with private capital, but Long story short, we did what I call a self-assignment, where I took a little bit larger of a loan from private capital than we acquired it with to pay us back for marketing expenses, all that kind of stuff. So we put out got out 10, 15 up front. And then when we marketed it for owner financing, we actually marketed it as a wholesale deal and had wholesalers approach us and then asked them when they were going to buy it for that price. We asked them, hey, so how are you going to acquire this financially? And well, I've got to put 25% down at a bank to get this, blah, 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 blah. Bank rates on commercial loans are like 20-year loans, 20-year amortizations with a 5-year balloon and like 6-7% interest. And so we said, well, what if instead we sold it to you for $15,000 more, but we gave you a 30-year mortgage, fixed rate, with only 10% down? He said, done. I ended up making a $55,000 net profit up front with like $200 or $300 worth of cash flow and like $10,000 worth of equity by mixing the strategy of wholesaling and owner financing, right? And this is why I encourage you got to know these different kinds of ways to do it for precisely that reason. It's about the same money out of pocket on his end, but we gave him a fixed rate mortgage for 30 years that was only a point higher than he was going to be paying to the bank anyway. Yep. Done and done, right? So yeah, when you're looking on your disposition side, it's somebody who wants to just have an owner financed house, and the whole deal here is I'm going to pay her $500 and I'm going to get paid $800, and that gross income is a net income of cash flow. I always require a 10% down payment, and I insist that you do too, because credit is not the determining factor for me on a performing note. Basically, nothing is the determining factor on a performing note for me other than did they put 10% down up front, draw the line down the middle. The people who put up 10 perform on their notes for me personally, and we keep our DTIs under 50 or 55. But yeah, so you can sell to somebody, so you get that difference in principal and interest, and that gross income truly is net income. You can go have a date and not look at the right side of the menu on. You're also going to have, hey, I bought it from her and I've got a note to her for 50. They bought it from me and they bought it for whatever, $100,000 with $10,000 down. So I made 10 grand up front, which is about the same, if not more, than most wholesalers are making their assignments. Mm-hmm. And now I have a note coming in of 90 and a note going out of 50. I have a $40,000 net worth boost, and I'm making $300 a month of actual money I get to go spend. So that's the beauty of the owner financing stuff. I think as simplified as it would need to be for somebody who hadn't heard of it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's part of what we've been describing is, and going over last week and again today, is this, what's coming down the pipe is definitely imminent. You know, I mean, we all need to learn to, as we were joking before the show, pivot. And pivot. But combining the strategies is key. Now, what would you say as far as, you know, when we're talking owner financing, you're talking the notes, creating the notes, and then managing that. What are some of the people that you put in place, the attorneys to write your contracts and things like that?
That's a very good question. So undoubtedly, owner financing, especially if you're acquiring and doing your dispo with owner financing, has a million more turning gears than the other strategies do. It just does, right? Now, that is made up for in the fact that it's all work up front, and then it's just make money for the rest of your life on it, which is nice, or rest of the life of the loan. Nice little piggy bank and everything there, but you've got to make sure that you're doing things the right way so you don't slip up on these compliance issues, because now you are dealing with consumer law. Now things like Dodd-Frank, which were put in after the crash to protect against all the stuff you saw in The Big Short, which if you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. It affects you now, right? But it's very simple to comply with all that stuff by having the right professionals in your corner. So depending on where you are, what state you are, it kind of changes where some of the things that you need to do. But from a global view, these are the people, the professionals that you need to have involved in this is a RMLO, which stands for Residential Mortgage Loan Originator. This is the person who you would have heard called as a loan officer before 2012. They are the one that keep you Dodd-Frank compliant. You need to have a good attorney that knows how to do seller financing. Not every attorney, not every RMLO, and not every agent are built the same.
And let me just, as somebody who reads these notes and gets to see these documents on a daily basis from attorneys, not every attorney is created equal.
Yeah.
In fact, there are some dreadful attorneys out there.
There are.
And read your documents before you sign things.
So,
make sure
gosh, I
and
can't encourage you enough on that.
And people don't, and I know they don't because they'll be
because you watched them.
Well, no, I'm looking at 3 right now where we have major corrections. Just so I can purchase those notes.
Yeah.
We have to go through one of them. We're redoing redoing all the major documents because they have major errors throughout them, and this includes going to what the principal and interest.
Yeah.
Like the attorneys, just because they're an attorney and they're great at legalese, that also means that they probably failed math. and remember that.
Good one.
Just remember that attorneys are not mathematicians. Okay, they failed math in high school and college. That's why they became attorneys and not engineers.
Yeah. That's funny. That's
So
funny that you say that. Yeah, you
just
gotta
remember
read it.
that, and make sure, especially look at your numbers, and then make sure that the writing, that long script matches what that number says, and that the terms are
That's
what
the
you
most
actually
common
set
issue
for
that I
it.
see is that the written out words of the number and the number do not match.
Yeah.
And learn how to use your 10B2 calculator and actually run it on every note to make sure that that number for P&I is actually the number it should be.
And that's a confusing thing to learn for people to for people to learn how to use. But they've got just a simple amortization calculator.
True. Yeah.
To go,
go to
okay,
bank
I'm going
rate,
to type in my years, and I'm
Yeah.
going to type in my interest rate, and I'm going to what the.
He's throwing his 12C at us.
Oh, I was like, what just came out of
what was
nowhere?
that?
Studio's
I'm like-
falling apart.
I'm like,
Ryan's throwing bricks.
I'm like, the producer's just throwing stuff at us right now. Yeah, the worst one.
I hear Grant and he says 10B2, so I'm like, oh, he needs his calculator.
Thank you for not like pegging me in the face with it.
The worst one I've ever seen, and this is no joke. There were 3 numbers to the right of the decimal point.
Nice. That's good.
007, like 007, and
you
I'm
better
like,
write me a check because there's no other way
in
I'm
one
getting
thousandths, in 1,000ths of a dollar, and I'm like,
What?
how was this not caught by 1, the attorney, 2, the legal assistant who typed it up, 3, the person signing the note, 4, the investor who sold it under finance. There's like got to be 4 sets of eyes on that thing,
Yeah.
and nobody caught that.
And this is one of the things I want to stress to you guys that I cannot stress enough, right? So we use a transaction coordinator. We use attorneys. It is your investment. It is your responsibility at the end of the day, nobody else's, to make sure that everything is done correctly on that. So you need to either have somebody on staff that reads that stuff for you that you know is way more detailed than you are, or be that person, right? Because exactly what you're saying right there. So we actually have the way that we do things is we draft our documents, we send it to the attorneys for review at our retained attorney's office. Then that gets sent to the title company, who then reviews it at their title company. As it goes through it goes through our TC, who reviews it, right? Like, we need to make sure that these documents are right, because you can say anything you want, but the only thing that matters is what's on paper. That's the only thing that matters. So you need a good attorney, you need a good RMLO. Depending on if you are marketing for yourself or not, you need a good agent. And again, this one is the biggest. Dude, I'm going to be very... You can earmuff if you care about your fellow agents, but like agents, it's not just that not all are created equal. All are created equally stupid, except for like 6 of them. So you need to find the good
I'm
agents.
not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. I said the exact same thing yesterday
That's
to my
hilarious.
students.
I mean,
Ryan
I
was
say
like,
it as
yeah,
well.
Ryan heard it, but I was just like, okay, realtors, and I love this
Well,
realtor,
but the
and
thing is-
there's talented ones.
The thing is that most of them are not trained for this sort of thing.
No.
And 99.9% aren't even aware, think it's illegal.
I was about to say, they
Yeah,
think it's
they think
illegal.
it's illegal. They think this
Because
is
that's
illegal
the-
and this is wholesaling's illegal.
That's
and
the defense mechanism. I don't know what it is. It's not because I'm
gotta be.
stupid. It's because it's
It's
illegal
illegal.
and I shouldn't know it. It's virtue signaling from the highest. Like, oh well, it's if I don't know it, clearly it's illegal.
But
So
it's also, I mean, that gets that trickles down
Oh, yeah.
from the big box
Oh, yeah.
brokers because they don't want their agents going out there and trying
And-
to do these transactions or helping with these transactions because they're opening
there is, and there's a lot
themselves
of
up.
compliance issues
Yeah,
that can
yeah.
be done on that, right? So you've got to have the agent, you got to have the RMLO,
Yeah.
you got to have the attorney, and lastly, you got to have a note servicer. Okay,
Yeah.
unless you can afford to pay somebody $50,000 to $75,000 a year on staff to only run your books and note servicing, you cannot afford to not use a note servicer.
And let me reiterate that. It's not just somebody that you train to do it.
Right.
It's a
No.
licensed person that you're going to have on
Somebody
staff.
who has experience, who can tell you what trust accounting is and handle the escrow analysis every year. Like, it's just, and by the way, if you're looking to vet somebody who's going to train you how to do owner financing, one of the quickest ways you can tell is if they tell you to self-service. If they tell you to self-service,
walk away.
Walk away. Because they don't know what they're talking about.
I can also tell you, as a note buyer, you're going to take a hit from me if you self-service, because I'm then going to have to transfer it in. And instead of setting it up and having your borrower pay from the beginning $30 or $35 a month, or, in some cases $50 a month, I've heard of other servicers charging. But instead of the borrower paying for that, I now have to pay for that if I'm buying that note.
That's a good point.
And so that's going to take off my yield, and I'm going to
Penalize
I'm going to penalize you for it.
You
And you're going to take
Go ahead.
no, you're going to take probably a 2 to 3% hit off of your unpaid principal balance. So yeah.
You want to tell them what a note servicer is? I just realized I didn't even mention
A note
that,
servicer?
Right?
Sure. A note servicer is somebody who, I think of it as your manager for your owner finance notes. So they will be the ones communicating with the borrower and taking payments. They're following all regulations, including sending out monthly mortgage statements. Then they will also report to the IRS at the end of the year. They'll make sure that the escrow is taken correctly and held correctly.
Oh yeah.
So, which is so important. There's I've heard of several note servicers around town, or people who are servicing their own portfolios, and they don't keep those escrow funds in a separate account. And in fact, they kind of view it as their own money.
Yeah, which is a huge no-no.
Well, and even another aspect of that is I just one of my students, I just made him an extra $400 a month because he hadn't done an escrow analysis in 6 years. He came on board with us, and I was talking about some of it. It's like he didn't know that you should change the escrow every year to reflect proper. And I was like, are you even making money on this anymore? What is going on here, right? And so just getting that analysis out there and done brought him another $400 in cash flow back into his pocket. So there's a lot of little details that can be missed on this, and it can be challenging. It feels like an uphill battle if you're sitting there without the service providers already, the relationship's already built and that kind of stuff. And so knowing that we've got kind of a national audience here, we can give you referrals here, obviously here in Texas and certain other areas of the states. But
I know national servicers, so it's
the servicing side is easier to get national.
Servicing side is pretty easy. There are some, finding a local attorney is really going to your local.
Is honestly very difficult to find sometimes.
Well, a good one.
Yeah. Because legitimately, so so we keep Matt Aycock on retainer, right? And one of his roles is, hey, I'm moving into a new state. I need a state local attorney that actually is worth their salt. One of his roles is to go find that attorney and interview them and vet them and make sure that, and guys, I can't tell you how difficult that is. It is very difficult to find that. So to her point of go to a local RIA, see the best thing that I can give you as advice if you're looking for a service provider in an area that you may not have that service provider is do what I call reverse marketing. Go look for owner financed houses for sale in your state or area. Call the person and say hey, I don't want to waste too much of your time here. I've got an owner financed property for sale as well. Who are you using for the RMLO? Who are you using for your note servicer? Who are you? Because that's somebody who's
already doing it.
They might have a connection to lead you down. So that reverse marketing is a real quick way to get just wherever you are, you should be able to get some clues as to who to use.
Yep.
Yeah,
those are great tips, especially for finding whoever, whatever servicer you need in any state. And then also, if you want to drop us a message or ask a question or something like that, one of us three will try to get back to you about, who we would refer to either get in contact with or might be able to point you in the right direction.
And I'll spoiler alert it before my meeting that I have it too, but we are very close to, it's going to take time, business takes time, but we're probably, but we're very close in business terms to having a national RMLO option available that's actually good. So
awesome.
That'll be great.
Congratulations. Yeah, that's exciting.
It's like a lot of vetting, and I'm pulling somebody in from, you're grabbing them and pulling them in. Because the only one that I know of that gets mentioned doesn't do literally anything for your compliance. It's fool's gold. You're just paying something.
And we're not going to mention who that is.
Yeah.
But a recent thing has come with a note that I was buying last week, and said RMLO didn't pull the report to find out if they had a federal tax lien on them.
Oh no.
And they did. And the federal tax lien was filed on this borrower. 2016 owner finance note was created in 2018, thus making the federal tax lien superior. So I'm not willing to buy something that has a superior loan. You know, a federal tax lien, if anybody's out there and dealt with them, you know, if it's filed after you create your owner finance loan, you can have that, you can still foreclose on them and have that removed. Does it take a couple months? Yes. And it slows you down. You can't take a deed in lieu. You have to go through the processes and actually foreclose on them. But when that IRS tax lien is existent before 2 years before your property, and there's nothing that can be done.
Yeah, it's going to have to get paid.
So again, yeah, it's very important to know which RMLO you're dealing with and to find out and to ask the questions, because again, it is your investment. And so you need to say, have you run a report to figure out if there are any IRS tax liens? What have you done on this?
Yeah.
And you would think that was
That would have been
mandatory.
flagged. Yeah.
I would have thought that was mandatory.
Well, I'll admit that I have not. That's not been something that I really push for, because from my perspective, like homestead affects that too, right? Whether or not the property is homesteaded. If it's non-homesteaded, then it's like super locked in. If it is homesteaded, you have introduced me to a new understanding of that lien position on there, but I don't know. I mean, is the federal tax lien a foreclosable lien on that? I mean, it's superior, but it's not foreclosable.
It's
You're not going to lose your asset.
No. But this is what it means. So you go into foreclose on that asset. You can't have that lien removed because it's superior to yours. They get paid off first. So you take it to a foreclosure auction, and that IRS tax lien is going to be paid from your proceeds. Yes.
Okay. Well,
I would
That's good.
I would
It's good
love
know.
to. Yeah.
So, and this is just evidence, right? There are just so many turning gears. I've had my name on over 1,500 HUDs, right? I've done $100+ million worth of owner financing, and here we are. Here's another thing, right? It is, and I'm the guy who's actually read Dodd-Frank and actually reads the property state code, right? There just are a lot of places to trip, but don't let that scare you out of doing this, because you can always find a reason to not do things. You just need to have people in your corner that you can trust and have defensible positions on whatever you're doing, and really have a way to back that up. So.
And let's be fair, this investor, who wants to sell me this note, he doesn't have to sell it. Well,
right.
I mean, he'd like to, get his equity out, and he'd like to raise some cash right now, but it's not required that he sell it. He could wait until that borrower sells the property or refinances it and pays off that existing lien.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to look into that. Yeah, because I thought that the federal tax lien just took all of their equity out of it, but that the lender was still the super lien that I knew of was the property tax, but not federal tax. So that's
federal
interesting.
tax. Yeah, you can never. You
right.
can't wrangle the big federal government. They're gonna win.
Divas, teach me something. No, that's good. That's good. But again, for things that are applicable to you guys, we just want to make sure that you understand, Kristen's a very advanced person in his industry, right? As am I, as all three of us are, with the experience that's gone on with notes. So don't look at.
Crickets on Ryan.
What'd you say?
Crickets on Ryan.
Oh yeah. Oh. But like owner financing specifically, right? And so, in having those notes in our possessions there. So don't get too bogged down by like little details, because I want to be very clear. That's a very nichey. The reason I bring up look, I've been on 1,500 HUDs and $100+ million worth of originations and haven't dealt with that. I've been doing this for years and years and years.
I honestly didn't think something like that was possible.
Right.
Because how could it not be caught?
So we just want to point out to you, we're part of.
And that investor,
things.
did everything right.
Yeah.
They used an RMLO. They closed out a title company with a title policy.
Okay.
But remember, the title company doing a title policy, they're looking at the actual property that's being sold, not necessarily the borrower's past. That's on you as the lender, and also on your underwriter,
All right.
to pull that stuff out.
Like you said, this is, like this is the first time you've come across it. You just learned about it.
Yeah.
And so don't be
don't
scared.
get bogged down. Don't be scared by that. This is a phenomenal way for you to make money in real estate.
Absolutely.
This is the Eddie Speed. I love how he says it. Like notes and paper are where all the landlords go when they grow up, right? Like when you start unlocking what it truly means. Let me ask you this, right? So if you understand. I think last time I looked up and it fit my narrative, so it's probably not anywhere close to this anymore, and I didn't look again so that I can still keep it in my narrative. But last time I looked up the financials on like Wells Fargo, I think it was like 80+% of their income at that time was coming from mortgage interest, right? So if you look at and it can't be anywhere near that anymore. But anyway, whatever that percentage is, but you look at every ATM, every brick and mortar, every Super Bowl commercial, every employee that rolled their eyes that you wanted to pull your own money out of your own bank account is paid for by mortgage interest at 3%. Why is it that we think that only Wells Fargo and Bank of America get to do that? If every golden parachute of a CEO who failed at his job and then makes, whatever $200 billion package as he gets fired from this bank who's doing mortgages, why do we just not make that equation of just like, well, I guess that's how they get to make money, but I'm going to go over here and wholesale.
Right. Yeah. And I tell investors this all the time. I'm like, be the bank. Mm-hmm. Think about who makes money in this country.
Who makes
all
the most
of the
money?
big banks.
Yeah.
Who makes the most money? It's all of the big banks. They are never in the business of owning property. Mm-hmm. They are in the business of lending money.
I always say if they wanted property, they'd be named Caldwell Banker, not Bank of America.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and for me personally, I had those 61 doors, and I had a spreadsheet before 2008, and then I had a spreadsheet after it. Once I owner financed the rest of them, like my last 6, early 2012. And when I put all of my calculations like into the spreadsheets side by side, I found out I made way more money with owner financing notes, even though I had sold them all at about $5,200, less PITI from my rent. So I took what you could rent that same one out, and I sold it about $5,200 less per month, and I still made more money.
Wild.
Cash flowed more, and it was, and I didn't have to hold on to
have the maintenance or anything like that.
Or I didn't have to be liable if all of a sudden an outdoor AC went missing or something like that.
Yeah.
So it is.
For sure.
And I mean, I have that concrete proof, but again, a lot of people are like, well, if I could rent it for more, why wouldn't I? I'm going to lose money, and I'm like, nah.
Just for the record on that is that I look at what it would rent for, and that's what their PITI payment is. Possibly, with their payment being possibly up to 10% over that, right? Because my logic being, look, if they're willing to spend $1,500 to rent this property, wouldn't they be willing to spend $1,500 to own this property? And you think about this too, and this is another area that I think is very important for people to understand who are getting into the seller financing world is, I look at all the time. I had one last night. Somebody messaged me on Facebook asking for, if we wanted a JV on a deal, and you'll get the ARV, you'll get what they owe, and blah, blah, blah. And nobody ever gives me the rent rates. And even internally, it was really hard. And this is one of the reasons I don't like hiring people that have been within the industry. I like hiring outside of the industry because anybody I hire within the industry, I have to beat them up to go get rental comps. Here's the thing. What does a sales comp tell you, Jaylee? When you look at the ARV, when you're comping a property, what does that tell you about that property?
I mean, it tells me what things will sell for in that neighborhood.
So another way of arguing that would say that your comps are going to show you what the most somebody's realistically willing to pay for a house that's like that in that neighborhood, right?
Exactly.
So that's what the purchase price becomes. Well, what about rental comps? What does a rental comp tell you?
That tells you what the most they're willing to rent. They want to live in that. And so a lot of times rent is more than what mortgages are in those areas. So that goes to what you're talking about. If the rent caps out at $1,500 in that neighborhood, well, then that's what people are willing to rent for.
Exactly. So now we know what somebody's willing to spend as far as writing on a contract as a purchase price from the ARV comp that you're used to getting. But also, don't you think that if somebody was willing to spend more monthly to live in that neighborhood, landlords would have requested that be their rent?
Exactly.
So the comps on rent also tell you what somebody's willing to spend on that type of house in that neighborhood on a monthly basis. So we sell for our ARV comp, and we sell as far as the contract price, and we make our monthly payment reflected by what the rent is, because our landlords have helped us out by saying this is what somebody's willing to pay on a monthly basis. So let's say it's $1,500 and rent, and it's a $150,000 house, which would be great. You're hitting your 1% rule. It rents for 1% of what the sales price was. Well, what I'm going to do at that point in time is I'm going to sell it for $150,000. I'm going to ask for $15,000 down, a 10% payment, and that would leave a loan of $135,000. I'm going to look at that $1,500 rent. That's my PITI number, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So I'm just going to back out the taxes and insurance. Let's say taxes and insurance are $500 a month. That means that I've got $1,000 a month that person would be willing to give me to live in that house, in that type of house, in that neighborhood. So I'm going to take out my calculator. I'm going to put in the loan amount of $135,000. I'm going to put in $1,000 for a payment. I'm going to put in 30 years, and I'm going to figure out what the interest is. And it's probably 9.5, 10, something like that. But now you know you're maximizing your monthly profits as well as your equity profits, because on owner financing, it's not just a wholesale, I get money up front and I'm done. It is you get money up front from a down, you get net worth from the equity, the note equity spread, and you get your cash flow. So how are we dictating those numbers? Well, it's the ARV comp tells you what you're selling it for. The rental comp tells you what they're paying for it.
Exactly.
So my rationale always with it is that I take the mindset of a bank, and a bank never wants to get that property back. And so discounting it a little bit below where it can rent for means that if they have to move out of state to go get another job, if they all of a sudden can't make that payment and they move in back in with their mother for whatever reason, they can still rent that property. They might not be able to sell it yet because maybe, it costs roughly 10% to sell a house. So if they don't have 90% equity or, 90%
LTV.
maximum loan to value, then they're not going to be able to get out of that house without writing a check. So just knowing that they were always able to rent it and still cover it and even make a little money, I was like, well, I'm never going to get that house back.
Yeah.
And for me, that's been
worth the $100.
huge.
Yeah.
When I first started out, I was maximizing profits and I wasn't looking at all that. And I got a bunch of those back and I got them back fast. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to know that I'm going to park that with my note servicer and that money is going to magically show up in my account every month and I'm not going to have to do anything.
Well, and I think the value that anybody watching can really extract from that is something that I think it's one of the things I love most about being in business, period, but being in this business is that you're a business owner, guys. We're merely telling you ways that we have been successful in this industry, but you get to make the decisions that make sense for your goals. You need to know what you want. What's your why? What are you trying to go towards? And then make decisions that feed that why. The beautiful thing is that we've both had lots of success in the paper space and for our own portfolio, and we both look at things slightly differently, right? And that's good. That's part of, I talk about when people come in through our education platform or whatever, I am merely a consultant to your business. You didn't buy a franchise. We're not handing you, this is the way to make money.
This is the way
in
you
this.
have to do
If
it.
you don't do it this way, you're kicked out.
It's your job to be an entrepreneur and look at the opportunities that you have, look at the risks you have, and weigh those versus what you truly want to receive out of this industry. And go down the path that's going to feed your why better. And her why is a little bit different than my why. And so you see a slightly different approach to a very simple concept. What is their monthly payment going to be is slightly different. And we both have valid and good reasons for it. I often will tell people, I don't care what you do, which sounds really harsh, but I really don't. I don't care what you do. I care that you know why you do what you do. If you have a why, I don't care what it is, right? If you're like, yeah, I did this deal that makes negative $50 in cash flow because I'm a surgeon and I don't need the cash flow. I want the equity that came with it. There was a $90,000 note spread. Cool. But the only why I will not accept is I wanted to get another deal under my belt. That is the only why I won't accept. But other than that, you got a reason to do what you're doing?
Do it.
Do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I first start, working with certain investors or standing up teaching a class, my first thing is you got to know what type of investor you are. And you got to know what your goal is. And so I've got guys who I work with and find notes for, and sell notes to, and they are looking to get a certain dollar amount of cash flow every month, and they just want to up that. Well, Yeah, if a note is farther down the road, that monthly payment might be cheaper to actually buy. And so they like that. Whereas there are other guys that just want a higher yield. And so when you're looking at a yield, and you want a higher one, sometimes going to the front of a note is better, and knowing that for all of them. So
it's good. It's very good.
Yeah, again, there's a zillion different ways to slice it, but knowing what your goals are when you get into this business and
how much hands-on and all of that you want to be. I've known people that they get the house back. It's no big deal. It's still your asset.
My organization is built for.
Yeah,
right?
We take it back. I'll sell it again.
And I do want to be really clear. I said I won't accept just that one why, but the other thing is, and I really encourage you guys to steal this exact verbiage from me for our core value because it's phrased very carefully, and that's we're going to do the right thing, especially when it's not in our favor, right? The especially is the thing that matters.
I love that too.
Because you've got to make sure, because I say that and I ask people to repeat it to me and I say, what was that value? And they say, we're going to do the right thing always. And that's not what it says. It says we're going to do the right thing, especially when it's not in our favor, because that can only be satisfied at the hardest decision, which you may only have 4 of in your entire career. We're going to do the right thing always. You get a hard decision. You say, well, I've always done the right thing. I'm going to make my money on this one. You cannot qualify unless it's the hardest decision with this, right? And the reason why I say that is that everything you do has to be run through that scope. I say has to be. That's I would encourage you guys to do that.
Be the example.
Yeah, exactly. And so to that point, I am not okay with a organization being built around, well, we'll just screw them on the price or the payment, and it's okay if I get the property back.
Yeah.
Our number one priority is to never get the property back. Same kind of why that Kristen had is we don't want the property back. However, the difference that we have at that point in time, and by the way, my default rate is under 1% in my entire career, right? We put good borrowers in and we don't take them back. However, my organization is built to churn, right? We are built to take on assets and sell them. So if I have to take a property back, so be it. And actually, long story short, you make a ton more money after you've taken a property back.
No, you do.
Yeah.
You do. Usually.
But one thing that we want to
9 times
qualify is, like we were talking prior to the show, is like you were kind of speaking on what you were just talking about, is where do you set things as far as when you're setting the price? You don't like to set it too far because that way you're not that person who is setting up those buyers for failure.
Yeah, because to that point, there is not a legal requirement for how much you can sell a house for. Okay, it is somewhat of a I say comping is somewhat of a scientific art, right? It's you just got to kind of take some not liabilities. What's the word of make some decisions, right? Yeah. There's nothing that says, and actually, I'll give you a perfect example of where this comes in. So I don't like, and I encourage you to not sell a property for more than 10% over what it would appraise for. Okay. The reason I even give that 10% bump is that legitimately a house being offered with seller financing is a different asset type than a house where you have to bring your own cash to the table, which inherently adds value to that asset. Now, we sell everything for what it would appraise for. However, there are times where we're in a neighborhood that we've been in that neighborhood a bunch of times. We know that it's going to sell in 4 days and everybody and their freaking dog wants it. I'm okay with going over 10% because we're still going to get a million offers at that, right? But I cap it at the 10% thing so that when they give me a 10% down payment, let's say it's a $100,000 house appraises, we sell it for $110, we get a 10% down payment. Well, what's their loan amount going to be?
$100,000.
Well, it'd be 99.
It'd be 99,
right?
Yeah.
We're bad at math. We're good at calculators. It'd be $99,000 because you get the 11 down, and now they're in a house with a loan at 99 that's valued at 100, which is not much different than a 0% down VA loan, which I know very few people who are going to have a problem with that, right? But nothing says that you can't sell it for whatever you want to sell it for. And here's a perfect example of where I think we ethically sold somebody a property that was way higher over value. Have you ever sold a property to, is it Islam that does not allow you to pay interest?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the solution for that person who wanted the loan was we worked out on our calculator what the interest that we needed to get was.
And you added it to it.
And we added it in, and so they bought the house for $300,000 instead of $100,000. And in the note, we just put some clauses of principal reductions for early payoffs. So if they needed to sell it, if they needed to refinance or something like that, then we would reduce the principal amount according to kind of where it would have been on the amortization schedule at that point in time, right?
Yeah.
So it was a 0% loan to a guy whose religion did not allow him to pay interest. It would have appraised for $100,000, and we sold it to him for $300,000. But made sure to put some clauses into that loan that didn't screw him and put him underwater if he needed to get out.
And just as a small caveat to that, my brother married an Islamic woman. And she said that that's absolutely not the case, that the Quran doesn't say that.
That's funny.
Well, I mean, some people.
But no,
I've
been approached by it. I've been approached by it. I know
interprets things. I mean, in Christianity, how many different interpretations do we have? So,
Yeah, it just happens.
But some Islamic people do interpret the Quran to say that you're not allowed to pay interest.
But the big
actually not
key
true.
being, our job is to be creative,
right?
Exactly.
and to help people get into a property in a way that you can hold your head high and look at a judge and say, nah, I did this for good reason. We do the right thing, especially when it's not in our favor. We were trying to help them out. We did it in such a way that we felt was ethical and fair. And we got this guy into a house who could have not otherwise gotten into a house. Everybody wins at that point in time. That's how I want you guys to look at this stuff.
I mean, and there's there is a time coming, because we are going to see this, where we're going to have a dip in certain real estate markets.
Yep.
It's coming. And I think everybody
Right.
knows
There's
that
no
it's coming.
way around it.
There's no way around it.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Every market's a good market if you know how to use it.
But, back in 2008, 2009, 2010, when I'm picking up all of these subject twos, these subject two loans that I was picking up were underwater. So what we did was we disclosed, and we said, this is the price of the loan. And in a lot of cases, we had a little bit of equity built in on top of that underlying lien, and we were making our spread on, on the actual interest points. But for a lot of those loans that we sold, because we said, yes, the loan that you're buying is here, and it's above really what the cost of this, where
That's
this
funny
property
to hear you say
is.
that, because I did the same thing over there. Miller and what is that, like Miller and Country Club or whatever, over there like that.
Yeah.
It's Garland. It's just
Garland,
a phenomenal owner financing area, Broadway and Miller and stuff.
Yeah.
And so there was a house that was they owed like 50, 58, 60 on a property that really only appraised for 45 or 50. But we provided so we got it under a 60-day option period with the seller. We said, look, this house is underwater, and I don't think we can do anything with it, but if you have any chance of making this work, it's through our, creatively, we'll see what we can do. So we subtoed it. We put a 60-day option period. During that option period, we found a buyer who really, really wanted to live over there, had a lot of family over there, and we told him, like, look, this house, we gave him the comps. Realistically, it's like a $45,000, $50,000 house. For us to be involved, we had to sell it for like 70, right? Or 75. It's like, and we were just very upfront about it. Like, look, it's not worth my time on doing this if I don't have this spread. Here's realistically what you're looking at, and if you're cool with that, then let's move. We moved, we did everything.
And now that house is worth $150,000.
I know, it's insane.
Yeah. So
So they did all right.
Yeah.
Y'all both did all right.
And again, yes, there's a time and a place, and it is coming where, you're just going, especially if you're picking up these properties subject to, and, for the seller selling that property, their only out is to sell it subject to. Otherwise, they're facing short sale, which is going to hurt their credit, or foreclosure, which is going to hurt their credit.
Yeah.
So, it's, what do you do?
Right.
And then you've got an individual who really wants this house. I mean, the worst one I ever did, which that was like way out in Royce City.
Yeah.
And it was a brand new house, and the guy was like, hey, this is the only way that I can buy a house.
Yeah.
And he goes, I love this one.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing that we talked about at the beginning of the show is basically, there is a buyer out there. There are, owner finance buyers out there by the hundreds, and they will continue to be around. This is a strategy worth looking into and educating yourself on.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to be an expert to get started, but you do need to have experts in your corner. So that's basically what we're trying to show you here is it's a viable strategy strategy, especially coming into the market that we're about to see.
And especially if you're getting in right now, or you're newer, you've done fewer than 15 deals, and you've been told that wholesaling was the way that you had to go because you didn't have the capital or whatever. Like, exactly. I love how like so many of the info space people are like, oh, you can do this with no money, you can do this with no money, and then like you find out that their dad was a multi-billionaire that funded their first. You know what I mean? It's like, but I'm the guy.
We touched on
like
that
I
before.
grew up actually in that neighborhood I'm talking about. I
Yeah.
grew up in that neighborhood. I was in a 1,000 square foot house, and it had gang signs tagged on it, and nobody in my family had money. I didn't come from money. I just decided I wanted to get into real estate, and like I said, God opened a lot of doors for me. I was able to get but like when I quit my job, I cashed out my big old fat check of a 401k. I got $4,500, and again, that was it. That is real. I'm the guy that did this with no money. So it's not, I know somebody, it's not, it can happen. If you're sitting there and you want to get into real estate, and like I said, you know, I went from having a net worth of the $4,500 that was in my bank account at that point in time to being a millionaire in 5 years and affording the ability to, I've gone on vacation for 6 months. I've gone to Japan for a month and a half. We're going next year. We've got Hawaii and Japan. We're going to Japan twice. We got Hawaii. Like you can have that freedom that everybody thinks that they're getting by getting into real estate. But what happens is so often, and tell me if this doesn't ring true, people say, I want freedom. Why are you doing real estate? I want freedom, right? And you say, okay, cool. And so everybody, you know, the Odyssey, right?
Wholesale.
So they get on this ship and they're setting sail for Freedom Island. And then they hear the siren song of like, but you can make $15,000 and it's not that hard. And they're like, and they end up on Have a Job Island.
Have a Job Island.
And they feel like they broke out of the rat race, and they feel like that, but it's not freedom to have flips and rentals and wholesaling. That is not freedom. That is a job.
Yeah,
Rentals
being a realtor is a job. Wholesaling is a job. Flipping is a job. If you have to do a deal and you're going to start next month, if you don't find that next deal,
it's all about that next deal.
You're unemployed the day after closing on those things. So just keep that in mind. I encourage you guys to really look into it. I hope this has opened your eyes to some stuff, because it is a viable and fantastic strategy that you will need to. I'm going to use the word need. You need to have creative financing in your back pocket in this next market if you want to survive through it, and if you want to end up in that area where you do truly have what everybody thinks exists. And there's no such thing as passive income, but there's only different levels. There's varying levels of passivity. Notes are the most passive that you're going to get, and I want you guys to have that freedom that you're truly looking for. And most of the time, just people haven't been introduced to the right way to do this to actually achieve their goal. So hopefully you guys have put that in front of them, and somebody out there is going to be able to have the retirement and have their grandkids go to a good school because of what you've done by introducing us all.
Or what you've done. Don't be, even though that siren song was lovely, and I'd love to hear it again, don't get on Have a Job Island. But go ahead and tell everybody, since you're here and you've graced us with your presence today and all of that big brain knowledge of yours. He's got an academy. He's got, he's got a whole system in place to teach you guys.
Absolutely.
So why don't you go ahead and tell them?
I freaking love training people, right? And I hope that passion comes out in doing things like this. I'm in a very fortunate position that like I get to make my money in real estate, and I get to do training because I love doing training and I love seeing people grow, right? One of the issues that you have with so many of the info marketers out there is they have to train or else they can't eat, and so they just act like, something. So the creativecashflow.com is what we made off of that, and we have some truly phenomenal people in that academy. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to build a community of owner financiers, of creative financiers, because that didn't really exist. You can go to Facebook and find 16 trillion different communities of people who have wholesaled well. It's very difficult to find a community who has a bunch of people who have successfully creative financed legally and is led by somebody who actually knows what they're doing and how to teach it. So
and has a moral compass.
And has a moral compass. There's truth to that too. So creativecashflow.com is where we do our training out of. I'll also JV with you if you're looking at this and maybe you don't have the cash to make a serious investment into your own education. Like, look, you're gonna pay for education one way or the other. You're either gonna lose money, or you're gonna have opportunity cost, or you're gonna pay an educator to help you through it. But if you're not at that place to pay and you still want to kind of have a good way of doing things, I do JV across the nation. I think I'm in 8 or 9 states right now, but we'll buy anywhere. You can go to creativecashflow.com/JV with me and throw a deal in there. My team will get to you within 24 hours, and we'll run that deal, and we'll bring everything to the table. We'll get it closed so that you can get paid on a deal where you might have had to wholesale it out for whatever. now you can actually have something in your portfolio to move forward with. So thank you guys for bringing me out here, and I hope to see more of you guys coming through Creative Cash Flow, and I get to know you and get to see you move forward and have successes in this. I mean, in this last quarter, this last few months, even I've had 2 or 3 students coming to me. Yeah, we know Josh Dees, right? Josh Dees that came through the Propelio stuff. Like, that dude has made on at least one deal every month for like the last 2 or 3 quarters, netted like 40 or 50 grand per deal. And he calls me and Ronnie all the time of just like, dude, I did, like, this is incredible. Like, I did this because you were, you know, we had a guy, one of our students a couple of weeks ago that posted on the Facebook group just like, hey, I was actually going to throw this lead away, but because of what I had talked about in one of our other members, because again, we really try to push the community aspect of it, encouraged him to do it. He turned a $15,000 profit on a deal that he was throwing away.
Amazing.
So creative stuff will get you there, or can get you there. It's just kind of up to you. So I look forward to seeing you guys come through and get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you so much for coming on today. It was awesome to see you. And you guys, thanks for joining the Real Estate Divas. If you have any questions or you want some answers or some recommendations, please just drop them in the comments, and be sure to sign up, share, subscribe, all of that business. Check out our new YouTube channel, because we're trying to grow that again. And we just love having y'all tune in.
Absolutely.
I'm Jaylee Thompson with Texel Real Estate.
And I'm Kristen Gerst with Capricorn Mortgage.
And see y'all next week. Bye.